you're just trying to get an idea of what it actually costs to buy a home. No, it's not just down payment that you are needing to save for. And let me warn you, there are a lot of costs involved with purchasing a home. And I want to outline that for you. Whether you are relocating here to North Carolina or you're a first-time home buyer, I want to give you an idea of how much you need to be saving in order to buy your home. The first two payments I want to talk about, the first one being due diligence fee, the second one being earnest fee. Those were agreed upon when you all were executing the contract. The due diligence fee goes to the seller. The earnest money goes to the closing attorney, and those are usually paid within a day of going under contract. So you want to make sure that that money is actually in your bank account when you go under contract. The second item that I want to talk about is a whole home inspection. Now, some of these estimates that I'm going to review with you are optional, like this home inspection, but it's definitely recommended. Home inspections typically cost around $400 to $800 depending on the square footage of the home that you are purchasing, and they review everything in the home: the chimney, the crawl space, the roof, interior, exterior. They go over everything. Now, these home inspectors, if they do find an issue on the report, they are required to say, please seek more evaluation from a professional contractor, professional or a licensed contractor, licensed plumber, things like that. So be mindful when you do get a home inspection. There could be more inspection costs when it comes to that. If a red flag comes up, say the inspector saw on the AC unit that it was end of life, and they recommended a licensed contractor, HVAC contractor, to come take a look at it. You would be also required, if you want to do an additional inspection on the HVAC system, to pay the HVAC company to come out to the property. It's typically $150 to just not service it, but just to look at it and see if there's any issues with the HVAC, give recommendations of what the repairs would be, and give an estimate or a quote of how much those repairs would cost to fix. Also, in a home inspection, you are looking to do a pest inspection. Here in North Carolina, it's not if you get termites, it's when you get termites. So definitely recommend a pest inspection, and those cost about $100. And typically your home inspector has a pest inspector that he contracts out to do that work. The other thing that a home inspector would be willing to do would be a radon test. Radon is a gas that comes up from the soil. It is a dense gas, so it is really low. So the radon test is going to test at the lowest point of the home. If you're on a slab home, you test the lowest level. If you're on a basement, you test the basement. So they're testing the gas that's coming up from the soil. We are hit and miss when it comes to radon, so I always recommend getting that radon test. And depending on the weather and the climate, your radon levels are going to vary. So if it's rainy, your radon levels could be higher versus summertime when it's not raining. So those are also things to consider. With a radon mitigation system, those are about $1,500 if your radon levels come back above 4 picos. That's the recommended level that you need to have a mitigation system. If your radon levels come back and they are under 4 picos, but you're still concerned with the radon levels, I would absolutely recommend going to Home Depot or Lowe's, or Amazon might have it, but there is a plug-in that you can get for your home to continuously check the radon levels in your home. So that's a little bit less expensive than the mitigation system, and it's peace of mind. Another item that is paid out of pocket before closing would be the appraisal. The appraisal is ordered from your lender if you are financing the home, and that is required. It's not optional, and that price is typically between $600 and $800 depending on what lender you're using and what appraiser they are using and contracting out. Another inspection that is recommended during during the due diligence period or contract to close period would be a survey. Surveyors have been very busy, so their prices are increased when they are busy trying to get your home surveyed, but they will mark the property lines out with stakes. They can identify any easements on your property, any encroachments, which means, so an encroachment is when your neighbor's property is coming onto your property. It could be a fence that was installed on your property or a driveway where they came across and are now on your property. So that's an encroachment. And then an easement would be something where somebody else is allowed to come on your property without asking permission. It could be a right of way if someone needs to use your driveway in order to get to their property. It could be a stormwater easement for the city to use a part of your property to help with stormwater drainage systems. It could be a utility easement where there are power lines in the back and there's approval already from the deed for your easement to have them access your property if there's any issues. So well and septic is also very common here, to buy a home with their own septic system and well for water. I would definitely recommend getting your septic inspected and pumped if that is what they are needing. A lot of homeowners don't know when the last time was that they pumped or inspected. It was probably when they purchased it, but they typically don't know that. So always recommended. The septic pump and inspections typically $700, and it's just peace of mind. They come out, they check the cap, they check the tank, make sure there's no cracks, and make sure that there is no funny business in the septic. And if it is full and there's sludge, then they can pump it when the time comes. For a well inspection, what they do, it's about $300, but they come out, check the well, test the water, make sure there's no E. coli or any bacteria or chemicals in your water. Another test that's recommended is a mold and air quality test. That's about $300, and they take samples of your home and send it out to the lab to get tested. Another inspection would be thermal imaging. Some inspectors charge for it. Some inspectors, it's included in the package for the whole home inspection. The home inspector that I use uses it free of charge for every inspection, so it has saved us. There was a client of mine purchasing a home that's been vacant, and he used thermal imaging it doesn't test for water leaks. However, it tests for changes in temperatures, and he was able to find a water leak in one of the bathrooms that we were able to negotiate those repairs. And it wasn't visual to the eye, but you could see it with the thermal imaging. So that is definitely recommended. The last item that we're going to go over for money that you need to save for purchasing a home would be closing costs. Now, you might think that closing costs are looped into your mortgage and your loan amount, but these are actually additional expenses that are due on closing day that you wire in to the closing attorney in order to close on your home. What are closing costs? Closing costs are things like attorney fees, lender fees, title fees, wire fees, homeowners insurance prepaids, HOA fees, property tax proration for the time that you are going to be there versus the time that the current homeowner was living in the home. So these typically, I like to give my clients a roundabout number. Obviously, it's specific to the house, how much you're putting down, what attorney you use, what lender you use are going to be different costs involved, but I like to say it's anywhere between 2 and 3.5% of the purchase price is what you need to be saving for closing costs. Now, closing costs are paid by the buyer. However, negotiating for the seller to help pay your closing costs is literally a no-brainer, especially if the home has been on the market, the sellers are motivated, it's a first-time home buyer needing more cash in their pocket, or if you're looking for an interest rate buy down, this is a great option to ask the seller to help pay some of your closing costs to keep money in your pocket and to lower your mortgage by putting that money that you negotiated with for the closing costs toward an interest rate buy down. One more thing that's on the list that you need to figure out of how much to save would be moving expenses. boxes, U-Hauls, moving companies, or pods, depending on how far away you're going, you probably need to save around $1,000 to $5,000. Understanding these costs up front can help you budget correctly, save appropriately, and avoid any surprises when it comes to buying your first home and making that first step. Check out my caption below for my estimate sheet for my home buyers in North Carolina. Like this video if you learned something new, and subscribe to this video if you want to continue learning about investing in Lake Norman.